Hey, this is Elizabeth coming back to you from the Walker Consulting Work Studio. Hey, wanted to let you know about a summer series on the podcast, special release, Exposing Excellence with the Roanoke Valley Leaders. This is for June, July, and August. Bring out your podcast for your summer, listening by the pool, at the beach, on a mountain climb. You never know where you'll go this summer, but you can bring the Dear Business Coach podcast with you. All right. And looking forward to learning more about you and your work. Please write into the show at dearbusinesscoachpodcast@gmail.com. All right. Now back to the show. Welcome to Dear Business Coach, the podcast. My name's Elizabeth, coming to you from the Walker Consulting Work Studio. Find one thing to move your business forward today. With conversations, spotlights, interviews, articles, and free resources. Listen, follow, and subscribe on social media. Dear Business Coach Podcast. We're on Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, YouTube. And don't forget Spotify, Apple, iHeartRadio, and anywhere you listen to podcasts. All it takes sometimes is one little thing to move your business forward today. Yeah, awesome. All righty. Well, Scott Perry, thank you for coming to the Dear Business Coach podcast today. How are you doing?
I'm doing really well, perfect in every way, some would say. And I'm really delighted that I'm going to get to spend this extra time with you today, Elizabeth. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm glad you wore a black shirt. I almost wore a black shirt, but that would have been fine too. But
I'm told that it's slimming and I could use all the help I can get.
Well, so today I have asked you here to talk about early adopters, and you and I have had a couple of brief conversations, but I haven't really had the chance to ask you to, in your expertise, in your field of study, in your personal study, to chit chat with me about what early adopters are. And I'm not really sure why I'm fascinated about asking you about that. Um, but for our listeners, Scott, you're a friend of mine, a family friend, and we're practically neighbors. You also know that I'm this summer studying excellence and talking to people in the area about excellence. And so at some point in this conversation, I might ask you an awkward question about how early adopters and excellence kind of overlap, if maybe you can think about that a little bit, because
Sure.
I'm interested in learning about why are some of us early adopters for some things and not other things? And does it apply to, I'm used to talking to people, I'm used to listening to people talk about early adoption in terms of products, but
Mhm.
I bet you probably have some interesting things to say in terms of thought leadership around who are these people. So I'm going to stop there
Okay.
and let you maybe let me listen to you tell me if my introduction was appropriate. Are you a business coach? Are you a philosopher? Have you studied early adoption? Can I ask you these questions?
You can ask me any question. And I'm a big fan of letting conversations go where they need to go or where they perhaps intend to go. So, I mean, you're asking me questions, around early adoption that have fascinated me for a long time. Just to answer the last question first, who am I and what do I do? That all of that is a work in progress, obviously. People often will say, "It looks like you're a coach. Are you a life coach or a business coach?" To which my response is yes. Um, I think that the work that we do, whatever kind of work that is one of the things that help us build identity and forge meaning in our life. So I don't really pull those two things apart. I think if you're a freelancer or a coach, a consultant, a teacher, a healer, solopreneur, uh, you know, a lot of your identity and a lot of your life is wrapped up in that work. And so, one of my clients recently told me that the reason that they were hiring me as their business coach is because that they felt like I could help them become a better person, and by becoming a better person, they would become better at their business. So I thought that was a really lovely way of thinking about it, because I do think that uh, who we really are is reflected in everything that we do, and that's what people see. And so a lot of my work is to try to help people become the people that they want to be, so that they can do the kind of work that they want to do and do that work with and for the people that they care about in their lives. And so it sometimes looks like business coaching, sometimes it looks like life coaching, sometimes it doesn't look like either of those things. But I don't really worry too much about describing what I do. I'm more concerned about why I do what I do and how I do that. So one of those mechanisms is this whole idea that comes from Rogers' adoption curve. And so Everett Rogers wrote a book really about ecology that's been adopted by marketers as a way of looking at the way innovation moves through a marketplace. And so that innovation could be a product, it could be a service, it could be an idea, it could be a cause, it could be a movement. Um, and the idea is, if you think of a normal bell curve, there's going to be a certain small percentage of people that adopt something early, and then there's going to be a small group of people at the end that will only adopt it when they have no other choice, and in the middle is the majority. And so the way that it's usually drawn out, you have innovators, and that's 2.5% of any population, any marketplace, that are buying, that make investment decisions based on the fact that something is new to them. And
Mhm.
then there are the early adopters, which is about 13.5% of any marketplace, that are buying because they can see that whatever it is working for the innovators. Then Chris, there's a kind of a chasm in between the early adopters and what's called the early majority that has to be crossed in order for a product, service, or idea to begin to cross into the mass market. But the early adopters will invest in that next, then the late adopters, and then finally the laggards. So there's like 16% of the marketplace that's innovators and early adopters. There's 16% of the marketplace that's laggards, and then the rest is distributed. I think it's 64% or 68% is distributed evenly between the early majority and the late majority. Um, and so the question then is, well, people will immediately be like, well, am I an early adopter? Am I an innovator? Am I a laggard? And the answer is, it depends.
Today, we want to tell you about a friend of the Dear Business Coach podcast. If you're thinking about renovating your home or business, check out our friends at Active Wall. Located in Martinsville, Virginia, Active Wall produces high quality moving, window, wall, and door systems that open up your space. Their innovative product lines include folding units, pivot doors, and gas strut windows that are custom designed to add style, function, and wow factor to residential and commercial settings. Energy efficient, thermally broken aluminum and proprietary hardware are at the core of Active Wall's design process. Their skilled team collaborates closely with architects, designers, and homeowners across the nation to ensure that the aesthetic and functional needs of the end customer are met. The products are made in the USA and they ship nationwide. Active Wall has a showroom and design center in Martinsville that is open by appointment so you can see and feel the quality of their craftsmanship. As a special for listeners of the Dear Business Coach podcast, you can use the promotional code Elizabeth for 5% off your order. Visit activewall.com/Elizabeth for more information and a free quote. Thank you to Active Wall of Martinsville, Virginia, for being a friend of the Dear Business Coach podcast. Visit activewall.com/Elizabeth to discover how Active Wall can open up your space.
because you can be an early adopter when it comes to something like technology. Probably you and I probably were not early adopters of the iPhone, but some people were innovative, like bought it right away because they trusted Steve Jobs and felt like he was a competent person and that Apple was a trustworthy enough company to deliver on the iPhone. And so they bought, and then the early adopters bought, and then then it crossed the chasm and started moving through the marketplace. Those same people that are innovators or early adopters with technology may very well be laggards when it comes um, to fashion or to diet and fitness or any other thing. So, you know, you're not you're not fully fixed in any particular slot in that distribution curve. It's just a way of organizing your product, service, or idea within a marketplace because the game is can you get the innovators invested? Because if you can get them invested, then you have a chance to move into the early adopters. And here's, I guess, the final thing before I'll pause to take any reflections or questions.
Mhm.
You don't have to move into the mass marketplace. So if you're looking at that chasm between the early adopters and the early adopters and the early majority, you can make a very comfortable living serving just the innovators or the early adopters in your marketplace. You could actually make a very healthy living just serving the innovators in your marketplace. So your decision on whether to move mass market or to scale or maximize your product, service, or idea, that's entirely up to you. It's not a must do. It's a do you want to do?
Okay, well, that's actually makes sense, but not really something I had thought about right this moment. So one of the things that I'm wondering about is when is my house going to come with its own wireless charging? I know that we can do it. I know we're doing it other places.
For real.
But yeah, so you said, okay, so what you said there lastly was that you don't, if you want to stay in the marketplace serving innovators, you can. Um, Say that again. You said that innovators make up something like 2.5%, and early adopters into that next part of the curve is like 13?
Yep, 13.5. I mean, and these are
Right.
ballpark figures, but 2.5% are going to be your innovators, 13.5% will be your early adopters. That makes up 16% total of the marketplaces to the left of what Chris Moore calls the chasm. And crossing the chasm gets you into the early majority and then the late majority and then into the laggards. Laggards are also 16%.
So, okay, so that actually is more than I would think in terms of people in a marketplace that where we'd be able to hang out if we're interested in talking to those people as business owners or positioning. Do you think though that you can't just position yourself in front of innovators, right? It has to actually be a real solution. Are we aside from the obvious, I think that with the private industry going into space, for example, that's pretty innovative, but I or not innovative, but that's pretty much for the early adopters right now, I would say. But are there do you think there's anybody we could look at right now that might be examples of early adopters? I just said wireless charging, another example of something that's not really new, but it could be marketed to early adopters.
Yeah, so an easy example that comes to mind is, Elon Musk earned a reputation, first through PayPal and SpaceX, but part of his desire to, put people on Mars and colonize Mars is he has to solve this interesting problem around battery life. To solve that interesting problem, he decided that he would start a electric car business.
Mhm.
Before he even before he even started going into production on electric the first Tesla vehicle, the people were lining up to purchase without even having seen what it was going to look like. And they but so why did those people start to line up to buy something that hadn't even been put into production yet? They trusted Elon Musk's competence, and they believed in his ability to deliver on this idea. And so, those are the innovators. They are purchasing innovation based on their belief and the competence of the person that's delivering, and the desire that it's going to fulfill for them. The and so what Elon Musk did is he sold the most expensive car first because it was a way of funding the rest of the business, right? I mean, if he had if he had tried to sell an economy model right out of the gate, there wouldn't be enough people with willing to buy something that was competing in the broader automotive marketplace. So he was going with, serving a luxury market that was uh, ba- basically shopping for status. Like I'm going to be the only person on my block to have one of these. And then once I don't remember which model it was that was first, might have been the S, but once that was launched and the innovators got their car, then the early adopters saw that car parked, in the driveway next door or in the parking lot of the shopping center, what have you, and that's how he was able to spread and get more people to purchase that very first very expensive electric car. And then he moved down market. Then he started to create more economy models. And so, I don't know that you could say that Tesla has crossed into the early early majority, mass market
Mm.
yet or not. I don't know what the sales figures are, but that's kind of an example of how that works. The way that I think about it is that in general, most people don't buy something just because it's new. People
Mm.
don't generally want to buy innovation because what people want is they want the security and safety of knowing that it works, and they also are buying, to a certain degree, identity around status, right? So
Mm.
very very few people in any marketplace are going to be the first to buy. But if the first to buy are delighted and the idea, product, or service works, then the early majority are not buying innovation as much as they're buying information. Now they can see. We live in an area where there's you can see a lot of solar panels on people's houses. The first
Mhm.
solar panels were a very hard sell. Very, very few people bought solar panels and put them on their house here at the beginning. But as people in neighborhoods like, mine in town, uh, put solar panels on their house, and I can now see, oh, that's kind of cool. Um, Maybe I'll go ahead and do that too.
Mm.
They're not buying it because they understand it.
Mm.
They're buying it because there's evidence that it works. And I can talk to my neighbor and he can tell me about how he's saving money on his electric bill or even actually making money because he's selling electricity back to the power company or what have you. But
Mhm.
now I have information that I can use to make my buying decision. Um, it takes more effort to cross the chasm and go into the mass market. The people at the end of that bell curve, the laggards, they're not going to purchase solar panels until they actually just come as stock accessories to your house. So, I mean, this is how indoor plumbing and all sorts of other things, worked its way through the the population, through the marketplace. Uh,
Dear Business Coach podcast is brought to you by Walker Consulting Works. Visit walkerconsultingworks.com. Presenting this fall, October 18th, The Power of Laughter, a masterclass with Clayton Fletcher at the Jefferson Center in beautiful downtown historic Roanoke, Virginia. October 18th, 2024, presented by Walker Consulting Works. This is a full day seminar at the Jefferson Center. We will have morning coffee and tea, catered lunch. Learn from an international professional stand-up comedy headliner what comedians know that all business people should know. The link to the Jefferson Center dedicated URL for the Power of Laughter tickets is at walkerconsultingworks.com. And you can also take a look at the outline there for the day, what to expect from the workshop, and watch a full interview of Clayton Fletcher with me, Elizabeth Walker, on YouTube to go over his masterclass based on the #1 best-selling Amazon business book, The ROI of LOL, which Clayton Fletcher co-authored with Steve Cody. All right, check it out. That's walkerconsultingworks.com.
it's just, it's just a way of kind of making sense of how these things work. Does that make
Yeah,
sense?
well, sometimes I wonder if there's an innovator who genuinely wants to see a thing come to fruition. It's a technology. We have to see if it works. This is exciting. And then we have to figure out who's going to pay for me to continue with this innovation. So how do we make that um, technology that I'm personally interested in learning how to build into something that is a status symbol that somebody wants to buy? That seems really tricky. Or do you think that just kind of happens naturally because of the psychology of it being, as you say, something new, but then you also said, well, it's not just new. Then there's this information adoption and status.
Yeah, that's a great question. So part of the evolution of this idea from Everett Rogers that again comes from actually ecology, and as it's been applied to marketing and how ideas, products, and service move through the marketplace. In addition to the bell curve, there are 5 adoption decisions that
Oh.
buyers are using. And so here's 5 things that people can think about, or anyone with a product, service, or idea that they want to sell or spread, can think about. The first is relative advantage. Does this help me get or do what I want to get or do in a way that's easier, faster, or less expensive? Because if you can prove relative advantage that this is, so if you're not the first person in the marketplace, the first in the marketplace is always going to do great because there's no other choice, right? But if you're entering a marketplace where there's more competition, then it's very hard for people to say, I'm going to switch or move from one product to the other, because people generally, there's this thing called lock-in. People just will keep buying the same thing over and over if it's a commodity product or service. But if you can prove that your product or service is easier to use, cheaper to use, or more effortless to use, you can sway some of the marketplace to consider your idea, product, or service. The next thing is compatibility. Is this thing compatible with my lifestyle, with my beliefs, with the story I tell myself about myself? Like, there are some people that are going to look at solar panels and say, you know, I'm not one of those people. I don't do that. And then there are
Hmm.
other people that are going to, see solar panels as, greener, cleaner, um, cooler, whatever, and they will make more status related buying decisions. Um, Another adoption decision is simplicity. Is does this, well, it could also be complexity, right? Does this make my life easier, or does this allow me to do what I need it, what I want, the outcome I want from this? Does it make it easier? Some people actually prefer complexity, or make, like, people people that are into extreme sports are looking for things that are harder and more dangerous to do. They're not looking for things that are simpler and easier to do. So how you think about the complexity or simplicity of your offering can be part of your adoption decision approach too. Um, Another is tryability. Like, can I try it before I buy it? This is what happens when, you buy an iPhone and it comes with a free month of Apple TV. They're giving you a chance to try it before your card gets charged and you start being on a monthly subscription for that product. And then the final is
Hmm.
one that I alluded to earlier, which is observability. Can I see that it's working for other people? That's how Tesla got, the idea of the Tesla spread through the marketplace, the idea of solar panels spread through the marketplace. This is how Harley Davidson drivers, or riders identify each other, even when their bike is not anywhere to be seen. Like, there's, they have the tattoo, they have the torn off sleeves, they look like Harley drivers. And so, there's this observability, and again, kind of cultural status oriented buying decisions. So those are things that, are part of the way marketers think about how to uh, how to get someone to adopt a product, service, or idea, so that you can move them through that bell curve through the marketplace, at to whatever level that you want to reach.
So that's kind of interesting. So I'm looking at these five adoptive decisions, and it's not exactly correlated to the bell, right? So when we're looking at the curve, when we're looking at that 2%, 13%, the mass, and then the other side, and then the laggards. I When you said, for example, observability, that's a status symbol, but that's not necessarily somebody who's going to buy something who's an early adopter for status, right? Those could be two different motivating kinds of status, right? Am I
I would think of those as two separate ideas within the whole idea of marketing. The bell
okay?
curve is just talking about where your where people in your marketplace fit within that
Mm-hmm.
marketplace. There are certain, if I'm selling insurance, there are some people that are going to buy the new insurance plan. There are some people that are going to wait to see if the new plan, Geico car
Mm-hmm.
insurance did this really effectively, right? It was like they got their early that the innovators bought it because it was new insurance and they were tired of Nationwide and State Farm. The early adopters were making sure that that it worked for the innovators, but then, there was, the cute commercials with the lizard or the gecko or whatever it is. um, so they're playing to observability. I can see that it works. It Relative advantage, it's cheaper than most other insurance. It's They market it as, simple. Uh, you can save whatever it is, say $1,500 a year with a 15-minute call. Um,
Mm-hmm.
there's triability built into it, because you don't have to lock into an insurance plan. You can always switch back to what you used to use. So you can use any of those adoption decisions. Actually, the more that you can employ, the better, to get people to to be innovators, to be early adopters, to be early majority. So you can use any of those adoption decisions at any point within the curve to reach the next level of the marketplace, if that makes sense. That's the way that I see it.
Mm-hmm. Um, i- for the sake of looking at early adopters and studying early adoption, the in the idea of excellence, right? That can mean a lot of things to a lot of people, but I immediately identify, or my brain in a very simple word association, very primitive word association, might identify excellence with an innovator. And so when I'm looking around at, say, a room full of people that I work with, who do I pay attention to at work? Who's the innovator? Who's always got the fun new gadget? Who's always got the new marketing idea? Or maybe it's the business owner who's changing the product or changing the system that we deliver the product. Often, right? I would assume as a consumer or as an employee that it's in the sake of excellence. I don't know if that's actually true or not. Um,
I would say,
if in terms of looking to people to follow, it's really easy for me personally to look at somebody who's always looking to the next best thing and think, well, I should be paying attention to what they're doing. So does that make me somebody that's in that next, I'm looking to the innovators, right? I need a tiny bit of evidence, but not a whole lot. But do I need to be careful as to who I'm looking at that are innovators, thinking that they're doing this because they're excellent people or excellent thinkers?
yeah, it's a great question. I think again, it depends, right? There's again, in certain markets, we might see ourselves or be the type of person that's always looking for innovation. In others, we may actually be really conservative. So it depends on, we the thing about innovation is it does pique our interest and it does generate a little excitement. That doesn't mean that you're actually going to make a buying decision based on that excitement or interest. I
Okay.
a lot of people that were got their I mean, just to kind of take the Tesla example again. If the next Tesla comes with no steering wheel, and I say, hey, this car is completely self-driving. It doesn't even have a steering wheel. You want to see it? Most people are going to say, hell yeah, I'd love to see that. And
Right.
I show it to them and I say, I just bought this thing, for $25,000. But I've decided that I'm gonna, buy the next model or whatever. I'll let you have it for $1,000. Well, that's a killer deal. Very few people are going to say, yeah, totally. Even though it's, a lot cheaper. So it's, the relative advantage. It's cheaper. It makes life easier. I don't have to steer. I don't have to brake. Um, you know, I can see that that this person, none of those things matter to most people. They're not ready for a car that doesn't have a steering wheel. So the we may look to the innovators to satisfy our curiosity or pique our interest or give us a little bit of excitement. That doesn't mean that we're ready to just jump on the bandwagon with whatever that technology or whatever that product is. And so, the other part of your question around like excellence or preeminence in the marketplace, that's one way to go, right? You can make a lot of money being the cheapest and the most convenient, right? That's why Walmart has done so well. They're not it's not an excellent store by any means. But it's exactly what to expect. You know that the prices are likely to be the cheapest available. Um, and it's convenient. You can shop for your groceries, you can shop for your hardware, you can shop for your clothes and anything else that your pharmaceuticals or what have you. So like there's all these different ways to, all these things are just ways that you can position yourself. Now, I think you and I and most of the people that are in the community that we're in, and certainly the people that I am trying to work with, they do have this desire to achieve excellence or preeminence in their field. They, if they're if they have a business, a small business, they want it to be the very best uh, business in that realm in their town or in their corner of the internet or what have you. And so that's, when you're positioning yourself as being the very, very best at what it is that you do or sell, then that is a way that you can definitely position yourself to serve the innovators and the early adopters, because you can charge a premium because you're the one and only or the very best choice in whatever it is that you do. Where someone else might say, well, I'm going to be the cheapest, and the easiest, and I'm going to be the most ubiquitous, and I'm going to sell at a scale that allows me to um, make a great living that way. So there's all these different ways that um, these things layer on top of each other. The I think one thing to think about for people that I know are part of your audience is a lot of them are the same kind of people that are in my community. They're solopreneurs, they're freelancers, they're creatives, or coaches and so forth, that are sole proprietors. They are in a business of one, or a very small business. Ultimately, if that describes you, then you're probably the kind of person that wants to, like, you want to play the game of life and do business your way. And so call it play your game, right? Like define the game that you want to play. If you if you want to pursue excellence in your craft or your in the work that you do or the product that you create, if you want it to be the very, very best, um, then uh, playing the game of trying to be someone that plays the game of mass marketing is probably not gonna turn out well for you. So you have to decide what kind of game you want to play, what kind of um, product, service, uh, or idea do you want to create. What do you want it to say about who you are and what you believe and what you do and what your values are and what you're good at? And then how do you inject that into the marketplace in a way that aligns with your core values and your guiding principles, so that you can put uh, your product or service in front of enough of the right people that you can then make a better living. I really believe that you can, and you and I have worked together on this quite a bit. Like, I believe it's entirely possible to make a better living by making a bigger difference, by being super clear on who you really are, what you're really good at, and where you really belong. If you can dial that in well enough and then start strategically putting whatever it is that you do in front of the right people, you can not only get better at whatever it is that you're doing, but you can actually boost your bottom line in the process and do it in a way that fits into your lifestyle. Uh, you know, some people say lifestyle businesses are a myth, but I think the bottom line is, are you in business is your lifestyle all about just your business? Because there's lots of people I know that spend 8 to 10 hours a day in their business and don't have much of a life. Or do you want your business to fit around your lifestyle? And that's something that I've been able to achieve for myself, and that's the thing that I try to teach and help my clients achieve is, how do you make the difference you want to make the living you need to make so that you can do the other, so that you can have the lifestyle that you want to have.
Well, I was going to ask you to tell me what you think excellence is, but you just did.
Okay. Yeah. Very, very personal, right? We all have different, for some people it's the status of being number one. I don't need, I don't have any desire to be a guru or a famous digital marketer. I'd much rather just quietly do my work, out loud and in public for the people that would like to hear from me. And if I can make a comfortable living doing that, then that's good enough for me. Because ultimately, what I want to do is spend most of my day with my grandson and with my wife.
Well, out loud and in public is the phrase that I hear you use a lot, and I will close with that and say thank you. But that is one of the biggest phrases. There are a lot of things that you do and say. I think that people come to you because they're already interested in self-innovating, because you naturally encourage that, and you are open and in public about the fact that that's something that you study, or at least that's the way that I perceive you and what you study. So thank you. But yeah, so out loud and in public is a thing that a lot of us could very much use a coach on, because that can be scary. But I have to tell you, in my experience with you, Scott, you don't make it scary. So, but it could be. So, if you are an innovator, it can feel, or if you want to be an innovator, it can feel like, well, you really do feel like you're in that 2.5%. And so being out loud and in public about it um is risky. And so thank you for being a place where those of us can go to work that out, would be the one way I could say that.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that. It can feel really risky to do your work out loud and in public, where in the age of the internet, the trolls and the naysayers can speak up and criticize. But I would say the much greater risk in life is to not um, fully become who you'd like to become, and to not fully do the things that you want to do. That's the much greater risk. So oftentimes, when we put things into that kind of um, when we look at the alternatives, it gets a little bit easier to share your work out loud and in public.
And we can find you at Creative on Purpose. Scott Perry is Creative on Purpose, and Facebook, you're Scott Perry on LinkedIn. Any other taglines I'm forgetting?
No, no. I'm very easy to find on online and on social media. The best place to go if any of these ideas have resonated with you is to look for my Substack publication. And if you put either Scott Perry or Creative on Purpose in a Substack search, you'll find me.
That's right. And we're talking about Substack this weekend in your workshop.
That's right.
Okay, Scott, thank you so much for joining me here today. I hope you have a great afternoon.
My pleasure. Always good to see you, Elizabeth. Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining me today. My name's Elizabeth, coming to you from the Walker Consulting Work Studio in Floyd, Virginia. This has been an episode of Dear Business Coach.
Hey, this is Elizabeth coming back to you from the Walker Consulting Work Studio. Hey, wanted to let you know about a summer series on the podcast, special release. Exposing Excellence with Roanoke Valley Leaders. This is for June, July, and August. Bring out your podcast for your summer, listening by the pool, at the beach, on a mountain climb. You never know where you'll go this summer, but you can bring the Dear Business Coach podcast with you. All right. And looking forward to learning more about you and your work. Please write into the show at dearbusinesscoachpodcast@gmail.com. All right. Now back to the show.